Donald Trump was the Supreme Chancellor, Part 2. Hello there everyone, and welcome to the fourth installment of the Bantha Stew Sequel Week Spectacular. In our video today, we'll be going back to our video that was most commented on, and continue the story of Trump's election as Chancellor of the Republic. So grab a glass of spotchka, settle into a cozy chair, and let's dive right back into this story. Get ready, dear viewers, because this one is going to be a wild ride through the galaxy. Where we left off, Trump had gone into retirement, but he was still a political activist on Holo Twitter, and he mostly stays in his resort on Canto Bight, simply hanging out with other wealthy galactic figures and playing golf. He's signing autographs, and he makes endorsements for candidates who he believes would benefit the Republic. Padme has become the Supreme Chancellor, and she's very well liked. Anakin starts to drift away from his sympathies with the Galactic Republican Party, and he starts to become more open to other political ideologies. However, in that same breath, Anakin keeps close ties with Trump, and they communicate fairly frequently. In fact, Trump has started his own Holo podcast on Canto Bight, and he often will host Anakin, where they discuss everything from politics to what it's like being a Jedi. Time passes, and things in the galaxy are very peaceful. How does all of this start to change? Let's keep going and find out. While Padme's agenda of peace is popular, and her successor, Mon Mothma, is elected because she wants to continue Padme's agenda even further, neither of them could have predicted what's about to come to the galaxy. Some of the remaining clone soldiers, who have been mostly phased out at this point by the Republic government after Trump, report bizarre activities in the Outer Rim. They tell the Senate that they've seen new ships, the likes of which they had never seen before, and that they appeared to be powered by organic matter rather than the various sources of fuel that the Republic used in their ships across the galaxy. This shocks many of the senators in attendance at this briefing, and even Mon Mothma is slightly perplexed. She requests that a contingent of Jedi go to the spot which this anomaly had been sighted and investigate, along with some of the remaining clone soldiers. Rex, who is now a seasoned commander, goes with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka to investigate what's going on in the Outer Rim. When they arrive, they find out exactly what the patrol force had been speaking of. Before them, above one of the insignificant Outer Rim planets, was a starship that appeared to be made entirely out of organic matter. When Anakin attempts to hail the strange ship, he gets no response. Obi-Wan remarks that he can't seem to connect with the Force like he normally can, and Ahsoka feels the same way. Anakin becomes nervous as well, as he can't seem to sense anything aboard the giant vessel, even though it seemed teeming with life. The trio, along with Rex and his men, agree to proceed with caution. A Republic landing ship containing the Jedi begins to approach the organic ship. However, there is absolutely no hesitation from the other ship to fire upon the Republic vessel with its own form of space weaponry. Because this is only a small expedition force, the Jedi decide with Rex not to engage. Instead, they turn around and they return to the core with the information that they've gathered. When they reveal their findings to the Senate, it appears that there have been more sightings of these organic vessels in the Outer Rim, along with reports of beings calling themselves the Yuuzhan Vong slaying countless systems, and absolutely annihilating any form of artificial life that they stumble upon. Some video recordings of the invaders have surfaced on the HoloNet, and things look incredibly grim for the Republic. Never before had they faced a threat of this magnitude from an outside invader. Historians say that while some sightings of these creatures had been made in the past, they were few and far between in the expansive history of the galaxy. The organic ships continue to lay waste to many Republic systems, and the Jedi find that they're almost defenseless against the lack of impact that their force powers have on the Vong. At this point, Donald Trump begins chirping once more on Holo Twitter. He says that the galactic elites have failed the galaxy, and that his old policy should have continued to avoid such a dramatic defeat. Many people online who've escaped from the Vong have reported them talking about their history, and they've overheard the Vong saying that this galaxy was weak and ripe for the taking. Trump continues to say that if he had just gotten his galactic wall built, and if the elites had simply seen his fantastic vision for the galaxy, then they would have never been in this situation. Trump reemerges into the fold of galactic politics, and once again, he starts to pick up steam. He calls Mon Mothma Meowing Mon because she's all talk, no action. Trump compares himself to a lion and Mon to the cat, and he is the guy with the powerful roar that the Vong would be forced to listen to. Trump even goes so far as to accuse the elites of harboring Vong sympathizers and sleeper agents who have made the galaxy weep and ripe for the Vong's taking. Trump blames the fact that he lost political office on the Vong, saying that they have been waiting for weak, really weak leaders to come forward and abandon his plan to make the galaxy safe again. Because Mon Mothma and Padme had dramatically reduced the military size during their tenures as Chancellor, many planets fall to the might of the Vong's ferocious religious zealotry. Their planetary defense forces are not enough to compete. The Jedi, while discovering that Force Judgment works as an effective defense against their Vong attackers, still struggle to defeat them in combat, especially since they can't sense what the next moves of the Vong will be. Nothing that the galaxy does seem to work, and the Vong encroach closer towards the core. Trump, who is capitalizing on the war for his political gain, is once again elected as a governor of Cantonica. Seeing that the Vong posed a legitimate threat to his people, he begins to build up a strong local defense force in preparation for their attack, stronger than anyone else had before, in his words. He even brokers a deal with some of the more warrior sects of Mandalore, who are eager for a chance to prove themselves in combat against a new enemy to help protect his planet. He even builds a shield around Cantonica, and he invests heavily in the strong regional navy to help confront the world ships. When the Vong inevitably come to his planet, Trump is prepared. They're a little bit stunned by the shield generator, and they can't figure out how to destroy it. The shield is the same model as the one in Rogue One, which Trump purchased out of his own coffers to be brought to the planet. The Mandalorians are incredibly effective at subduing the Vong, as this is the first time that they'd seen such prowess from the warriors in battle. While the clones and Jedi had given them a tough time, the pure warrior spirit of the Mandalorians models their own. And while the Vong had known about Mandalore because of their agents in the galaxy, they had never encountered them in battle like this before. The commander of the world ship, which attempts to subdue Cantonica, ends up being destroyed by the small but strong fleet that Trump had created around his planet, especially since they had been unable to breach the shield generator. Trump had gotten his wall built after all. News of this spreads across the galaxy like wildfire. Trump is seen as a hero by plenty of folks in the Outer Rim, and he can often be seen taking photos with supporters and buying them massive quantities of food at Dexter's Diner when he's on Coruscant. Supporters of Mon Mothma still say that his plan for galactic defense would be unsustainable, but they have a difficult time matching his charisma. Trump continues to slam his political opponents, especially Padme and Mon Mothma. He nicknames Padme Pretty Padme, saying that she's nothing but a pretty face who can't get anything done because she's too busy looking for compromises. This kind of makes Anakin mad, who's still in contact with Trump, and he says to Trump that he wants him to respect his wife publicly. Trump obviously makes some rude comments about Padme to Anakin, and Anakin ends up feeling a little more disconnected from the man. He turns off to him a little bit, and while he still supports many of his policies, he doesn't like him as much personally, because he discovers that Donald Trump is a little bit of a bully. Sometimes the galaxy just needed a strong man. Right now, with the Vong continuing to encroach on the core, Trump looks like the perfect candidate. While he continues to govern on Cantonica, Trump is also asked frequently if he would try to run for another term as Chancellor in the future. Trump says that he tried that once already, and that the term limits had impeded his efforts. However, he says that if the galaxy wanted him to run over all the other lunatics in the Senate, he would gladly go for another term. He also calls for the Senate to vote no confidence in Mon Mothma's leadership, as she was slowly leading the Republic to its demise. Trump says that if he was in charge, he'd rebuild the military, just like he had on Cantonica, and that he'd deal with these vultures Vong, in his words, in an effective manner. Eventually, his calls are heeded, and Mon Mothma's pacifist approach falls out of favor with the people. She is ousted from power, and in a little bit of a what-the-hell move, Trump throws his name into the ring for Chancellor. To his shock, it appears that despite the term limit, the Senate wants him back. They even push forward a bill to formally abolish term limits so that the Galactic Republicans can get back into power. In his victory speech, Trump rails against the elites, and he promises that in his next term, he's going to make the Vong sorry that they'd ever touched his galaxy. He says that he's going to build a military that's huge, huger than the galaxy's ever seen before, and that he'll work for the betterment of the people as a whole. As a matter of fact, even though many gripe and complain about Trump's bombastic leadership style, he is an effective war leader. He's incredibly black and white, and what you see is what you get. He tells the people that he lies, steals, and that he's self-interested, unlike all the other politicians in the Senate. However, his supporters believe that Trump's self-interest is good for their own as well, especially during war. His bombastic behaviors actually improve the morale of the people, providing them with some entertainment while they're confronting the Vong. Trump commissions more clones to be produced, and he also gets the ball rolling for shield generators to be rolled out to many more of the planets in the path of the Vong invasion. Not only does the galactic economy begin to boom with war production, but people are unified behind a common goal again. Even the Mandalorians, who are still led by Duchess Satine in this timeline, acknowledge that perhaps it's time to lean into more of their history and culture in order to combat this Vong threat. Her and Bo-Katan strike a deal, and Mandalore starts to rearm itself. Satine, knowing that she's fully violating her principles to do this, has seen the might of the Vong, and she believes that it would be better for her people if they rearmed. That means that something's crazy. Soon, the Vong begin to lose ground. With the cloning facilities active again, and with more planets obtaining shield generators to protect their surfaces, the warriors are forced to hold a more steady focus on singular planets, and they must devote more resources to attacks on individual worlds. Growing tired of Republic games, eventually, Supreme Overlord Shimra Jamain decides to launch a full assault on Coruscant. However, Trump and the military have been preparing for this possibility since he obtained power. There is a large garrison ready to combat Vong attackers, along with a strong contingent of Jedi remaining at the temple, who Trump still doesn't trust to lead the military, but accepts their help in defense matters. Yularen and Tarkin have also built up an incredible naval blockade around the galactic capital in preparation for an attack on their world. Soon, Trump's leadership would be tested on the grandest scale imaginable. Soon, the Republic would see whether or not the Vong would overtake their entire galaxy. When the fleet of world ships emerges above Coruscant, Yularen is ready in the skies. There is no hesitation. The Republic Navy immediately opens fire on the Vong. They're shocked by this tactic, but their warrior spirit pushes them forward. Savong La and Nas Choka respond in kind, sparing no care for Republic lives. They spray back with their Yaret core cannons, melting through some of the Venators with molten goo. They also managed to break down the shield generator in the same way, causing it to collapse into rubble. Because of this, the Vong are able to make it to the ground, and their attacks continue. However, the Republic is ready here too. New clones, learning from the experience of older ones such as Rex and Cody, are trained in the weak spots on Vong armor. Ark's commandos and the Jedi defenders are able to hold back the ground invasion forces, hoping that the things will continue to proceed and go their way. The Vong end up releasing a chemical amalgamation that they had created called Voxin on the Jedi, but they've seen it used elsewhere in the galaxy. They put their masks on, and they continue to breathe filtered air as the attacks continued. A covert clone commando raid on the capital world ship also results in the elimination of both the Supreme Overlord, along with the Yuuzhan Vong Warmaster, Savong La. Just like in the books, the Republic manages to order the Vong to retreat, and they end up negotiating with the new Supreme Overlord, Nas Choka, for many Republic worlds to be restored to the way that they were before the Vong forming. The dust settles over Coruscant, and the galaxy begins to rebuild. Trump, understanding that punishing the Vong would only incur more of their wrath, instead promises to work with them. He gives them a small, inconsequential world in the Outer Rim to inhabit, and in turn, he asks for their help in rebuilding what they had destroyed, along with freeing the slaves that they had taken. The Vong agree to this bargain, and they start to rebuild together. The galaxy, following the war, more clearly sees Trump's vision. It was one that would hold the people together, and that could help generate a strong, independent republic that would defend against attacks from beings such as the Vong. Even Padme, who had been a staunch opponent of Trump, concedes that perhaps he did have a few good ideas. Trump also admits publicly that he had some respect for Padme, even though they disagreed on many issues. Finally, the galaxy starts to return to some sense of normalcy. How do these events impact the end of our story? Let's find out. Eventually, even though the term limit had been lifted by the Senate, Trump resigns his position due to advanced age and ailing health. At this point, many of his political opponents believe that it is time to actually attack the former Supreme Chancellor, and they start investigating many of his shady dealings during the war, along with some of the ones that he had admitted to while in power in order to gain support from certain people. They start to find things, and they start to prosecute the Supreme Chancellor, or the former Supreme Chancellor, I should say, and he starts to fight back, saying that this was all just another witch hunt by the galactic elites to try and take him down. But Trump still returns to Canto Bight and plays some golf. Following his tenure as Chancellor, the Republic is far more militarized, and that is to stay. Due to the loyalty of the clones, Trump's successors continue to use them as a standing military, but they advance their benefits so that they are well compensated for their service. After the Vong, it doesn't appear that any large threats linger in the galaxy. All of the Jedi are weary, having now witnessed 2 wars in their lifetime, and they return to their practices of meditation. Even Anakin, a warrior, had become tired of seeing his friends die. While the Republic was now a strong, centralized defense force, its democracy also remains strong. Senators come and go, and things continue on business as usual, just with some help from the Vong. Despite the attacks on Trump and the continuing drama in the Senate, the galaxy goes back to a state of peace, order, and freedom. Finally, galactic politics could go back to some semblance of normal without President Trump. Or should I say, Supreme Chancellor Trump. Hi there again, folks. I hope that you enjoyed this sequel video. If you did, I'd recommend checking out the first part if you haven't already. What if Trump was Supreme Chancellor? If you have any thoughts about this follow-up story, please share them in the comments. Would you like to see this story continued even further? If so, how do you think that it would proceed? Have a bantha-tastic rest of your day, Star Wars friends. And as always, I hope that you've had your daily delicious dose of nutritious bantha stew.